Welcome to Currently Inked, episode number 6 for July 21st, 2016. This episode of Currently Inked is brought to you by Tom Barrington Leather Goods and Accessories. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Currently Inked. It's been a few weeks since I've done one of these, and you'll notice I don't have a special guest for this episode. I have been dealing with a lot of stuff, interviews for jobs. I'm still on the job hunt from getting laid off a few months back, and of course prepping for the big DC Pen Show in a couple of weeks. So a lot of stuff going on. I figured I'd take time out of this episode to, in addition to showing you some of my currently inked pens, to answer a few questions and talk about what's going on here at the Pen Habit and with Inky Fingers notebooks and all that fun stuff. So let's go ahead and dive in with the first pen I'm going to start off with, and this one's kind of a special one. This is the Aurora 88 Soleil. And this is a new limited edition pen by Aurora. It was sent to me by Kenro Industries, who is the U.S. distributor for Aurora, to take a look at and review. Beautiful pen. It's the 88 form factor. It's the 70th anniversary of the 88 this year. It's beautiful form factor, but they finally started doing it in some fun, cool materials. So this is kind of an orange crush style resin. Piston filler, very comfortable in the hand. Real nice long section, kind of like the Aurora Optima, which was on my top 5 for last year. 18K nib. Like the pen a lot. It's a lot of fun to write with. Like most Aurora pens, the nib's a little scratchy, or not scratchy, that's the wrong word. The nib is a little feedbacky, but aside from that, it's a great pen. I've been using it for a couple weeks. I've recorded and edited the review of it. I've taken the photographs. I'm just keeping it for another couple days because I'm taking it with me to the Seattle-ish pen meetup this weekend, and then I have to ship it back. So sad I have to ship it back. And what I have inked up in that pen is Iroshizuku Konpeki. Kind of a, it's a workhorse of an ink. I love it. It's a great kind of a lighter blue, almost turquoise, but not quite. Almost. I can talk good today. Almost turquoise, but not quite ink. It's a good ink. I like it a lot. Okay, so that's one of my first pens that I've got inked up this week. As you may notice, the scenery behind me looks a little bit different. I believe this is my first recording, publicly released recording in the new updated studio. I have done a lot of updates. So I'm moving to a 4K video setup. So if you've got a 4K monitor, it's going to be an even higher quality video picture. I've expanded my background a little bit and some improved soundproofing in the room, so hopefully that will help a little bit. I'm not mic'd up today, so my audio probably doesn't sound like it normally does in my videos. So that's been going on. I actually emptied the whole room out and cleaned it from top to bottom because it hadn't been cleaned for almost a year. So there was dust everywhere, and it was kind of the carpet was getting gross and everything. So I have done a complete clean out, new shelves, or an additional shelf. I only had 2 before, now I've got 3, so I could spread my ink out a little bit more. And I'm excited. I've actually started recording the videos already for season 4, and started putting them all together. And I've been composing new music and doing new intro animations and all that stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it. The videos are looking pretty good. I'm also working on a way to cut down the length of the videos because they were getting out of hand at 25 minutes long. So I'm trying to cram as much information in there as I can, but do it in a more concise manner. So, all right. So let's next go to a question. This is from Parsa in Dallas, Texas. And Parsa asks, what's a pen that you love everything about, but when you really think about owning it, it just doesn't work? Mine would be a Yardo lead. They're really nice, but they're also too ornate and slippery for everyday use. Good question. I have a couple. I don't have a specific pen in mind, I don't think. I feel that way about a lot of vintage pens. I love the idea of vintage pens. I love the idea of owning vintage pens, but I find them impractical for daily use in a lot of cases. One, because some of them, not all of them, but some of them are so delicate I wouldn't feel comfortable carrying them with me. The other, because I'm afraid that the material's old and it's not as comfortable with, being stressed out as modern materials might be. But I also find that most vintage pens just aren't very comfortable for me. After I've gotten used to using larger pens with larger um, grips and things like that, vintage pens are cool to look at and they're cool to use, but I'm not sure I would use them on a day-to-day basis. Um, the one exception to that is I do have a really nice Parker Vacuumatic Major that I use. I'll be reviewing this season. And I'll take that with me because it's still in really great shape. I got it basically unused. It had been dipped at least, but I don't think it had ever been inked before. It's still in very, very good shape from 1947. I also feel that way about most metal pens. Um, I like some metal pens, but if a pen is all metal, especially if it's slippery metal, glossy metal, really highly polished, especially on the section, I just can't get behind most like chromed sections. Uh, I like my sections to either be out of some kind of plastic or to be textured some way. Otherwise, I find them, because I tend to get sweaty hands, so I don't enjoy that all that much. So, thanks very much for the question, Parsa. Let's go take another question here. This one is from Rebecca in Minneapolis. Minneapolis, a city I've never been to but have always wanted to go. I hear they've got a great theater scene there, and I've got a lot of my friends from college. I studied musical theater. A lot of my friends from college are there or go there regularly, so I hope to make it to Minneapolis, St. Paul one of these days. Uh, Rebecca asks, dry inks! Exclamation point. Is there a way to know before you buy if an ink is going to be dry, or is it totally pen and paper dependent? It's not totally pen or paper dependent, but I would say it is far more, the pen and the paper have a whole lot more to do, especially the pen, with whether an ink is dry than the ink itself. You can notice this is me talking. I'm sure other people will feel differently. You can notice a difference in inks, but in my mind, it's not a huge difference in inks. Now, there's really not a great way to know ahead of time, aside from looking online to see if there are any reviews about how an ink is, other than getting to know what people are saying about the brand itself. So a good example is Rohrer and Klingner. It's a really nice brand of ink, but their inks do tend to run a little dry. Same with Franklin Christoph. On the other hand, De Atramentis or Aurora inks tend to run really wet. So I find a lot more consistency in the brand than I do from ink to ink to ink. Now, there are some variations between inks, but I think you're more likely to find consistency across the brand as a whole with a couple of outliers and individual colors because of the dyes that are used. I will tell you that some of the inks that tend to run a little bit more on the dry side for me are the Graf von Faber-Castell inks. Those all tend to run pretty dry. Kaweco tend to be a little on the dry side, but not terrible. I'm trying to think. Some of the J. Urban inks, not the glitter ones, but the regular line inks, tend to run a little dry. Rohrer and Klingner. And some of the Franklin Christoph inks also tend to run a little dry. Also, the Pelikan Edelstein inks are, in my experience, are generally just a touch dry. Inks that run a little wet, Quizzy, Diamine, Ackermann, which from what I understand is Diamine in a fancy bottle, Sailor, and Pilot Iroshizuku all tend to run a little bit more on the wet side. So there's not a great way to know exactly, but you can kind of guess based on general brand behavior. Before I go on to my next pen, let me take a moment to talk about the sponsor for this video. So if you are any kind of a crazy pen person like me, and if you're watching this, chances are you are, then one of the things you struggle with most is figuring out the best way to carry around all of your very expensive and very lovely pens while still keeping them protected. Now, I have tried all kinds of pen cases and folios and folders and pen sleeves. I've tried all kinds, made out of all kinds of material. Um, some have been great, others have been less great. But sometimes you want something made with the same level of craftsmanship as those really crazy, uber expensive Ebonite and Mach-E limited edition pens. Something that will protect your investment, but still look really good while doing it. If that's the case, you might want to check out some of the really high quality pen holders from Tom Barrington Leather Goods. Now, Tom Barrington reached out to me about his leather goods. I've not had a chance to use them yet, but he's going to be providing us with some as a giveaway on the Pen Habit, so keep an eye out. These look pretty fantastic. Now, there are a lot of leather pen products out there, but if you're looking for something different, Tom's work might be right up your alley. So he makes wallets and phone and glasses cases and that kind of thing, watch straps, belts. But he also has an entire line of pen sleeves and wallets made out of beautiful and really uncommon materials. So all of Tom Barrington leather products are made from leather of ethically and sustainably farmed animals, raised mainly for their meat. The ostrich leather cases feature a distinctive patterns of bumps, and you can see those kind of right here up at the top of the page, which give the leather a unique texture. And as I understand it, it can be a really tricky leather to work with, ostrich leather can. So you have to be careful and use someone who really knows what they're doing when it comes to ostrich leather. The stingray leather cases, and stingray is a leather that was really popular during the Art Deco period, the late teens, 20s, and early 30s. Features this really cool caviar-like texture that comes from sanding down these little calcium pearls that are embedded in the skin. So they sand it down, and you get this kind of dots of little tiny dots that look almost like caviar embedded in the surface. It's a beautiful finish, really really cool finish. That I am that's the one that if I had to pick one, that's the one I would probably pick. And both of these leathers come in, as you can see, come in just a huge variety of colors: blue, greens, oranges, reds, browns. He also has really great crocodile grain leather in tan, mahogany, brown, and cognac shades. So all of Tom Barrington's leather pen cases and pen sleeves are manufactured by hand in the U.S. And to find out more information, you can go to tombarrington.com. That's TomBarrington.com. So a huge thank you to Tom Barrington Leather Goods and Accessories for supporting the Pen Habit. And if you're interested in finding a really unusual but really high quality pen case or pen sleeve to carry your really nice pens with you, check out tombarrington.com. All right, so let's take a look at another pen. Now, people accuse me all the time of sticking with the really expensive pens, and it's true. I like expensive pens. I have BMW tastes on a Peugeot budget. It's just the way it is. And but I do like to take a look at some less expensive pens, and this is one of those. So this is the Chinese-made Hero 100. I'm getting ready to do a review of that. I'll probably actually record the video for this tomorrow. And the Hero 100 is, I wouldn't call it a direct knockoff of the Parker 51, but there's a lot of similarities between the pens. And I'll talk a little bit about that and the differences and the similarities when I do the review. Made out of a really nice brushed stainless steel. This came with a fine nib. The nib is really great. It's been an interesting pen. It's really nicely balanced, especially when it's posted. This is one pen where I almost always post. And I'm finding this to be a really great pen for kind of knockabout use, taking it with me when I'm grocery shopping. If I want to keep a pocket notebook in my back pocket, this is a pen I will often carry with me because it's sturdy, but it writes really well, has an aerometric filler, and I'll do the full review later. But in this pen, I have Diamine Steel Blue, and this is my first time using this ink. I like it a lot. I've got a fair number of turquoises, but this is one that, or not turquoises, teals. This is one that I'm kind of interested in. It's kind of a halfway cross between a turquoise and a teal, and I find I'm liking it quite a bit. So I need to play around with that one a little bit more. Okay, what do we have next? Next is a question from Paul in New Hampshire. Paul asks, imagine you could only have 2 fountain pens and 2 inks. What would they be? The fountain pens, one would be Classic Pens LB5. The other one would probably be my Waterman's Ideal number 7 with the flexible nib, because you got to have at least, I had to have at least one flexible nib, because if I'm stuck with only 2, I'm going to want to practice my flex writing at some point. As far as inks, I'd probably pick a blue and a green, or a turquoise and a green. I think, and I'm going to limit myself to those inks that are currently in production. So I'm going to say for a turquoise, it would be Visconti turquoise, which has become very easily my favorite in production turquoise. For green, probably Quizzy KWZ green number 2 is real high up there. But I think the winner would be Mont Blanc Irish Green, which is over there, right there. And I like a lot. It's a really, really nice ink. If I was allowed to sneak one more ink in there, it would probably be Mont Blanc. Let's see. There we go. Right there. Lavender purple, because you got to have a purple too. Blue, green, and purple for me. So those would be my 2 pens and my 2 inks. And since I have 4 Classic Pens LB5s now, because, you know, they're like Pokemon. Got to collect them all. By the way, in case you're curious, totally fell for the Pokemon Go. Nearly 40-year-old man walking around with his dog trying to catch Pokemon. Just thought I'd point that out to you. If I had to pick one of the 4 in my collection, it would probably be the purple one, because I just love that purple pen so much. So there you go. Other things that are going on over here at the Pen Habit right now. So, you know, the notebook after which this video series is named, currently inked. This is the version 1 of the notebook. The version 2 should be coming back from the printers this week. So if you want to get one of these current versions in, you know, at a discounted price, they are now available on penhabit.com at a discounted price of only $6 instead of the $8 for which they normally go. The new versions I'm going to have in both a pocket notebook and a traveler's notebook size. I believe they have 4 extra pages, and the insides have been redesigned, but there's now a really cool exterior cover. And they've all been branded under the Inky Fingers Notebooks brand name, which is a new brand name. I've worked with a couple of designers, one who helped me with the interior of the book, and another one who helped me with the branding and the exterior of the book. I'm really excited about them. I got the proofs from the printers. They look amazing. And it's not just a currently inked book. There's also going to be a blank and a lined notebook for now, and then later we'll be coming out with a few other notebooks, including a dot grid, a graph, and I'm working on a cool bullet journal style planner as well. So I'm playing around with that right now. So it looks like we'll have a full, nice, robust line of these notebooks coming out, but keep an eye out for those. I'm sure I'll talk about them here on Currently Inked. But if you want to get some of the V1 of these currently inked notebooks before they're gone, you can go and get them at Pen Habit now for $6, so 25% off the regular price. All right, let's do another question. Let's see, what do we got here? Robert from Shoreline, Washington, just down the road from me, not too far away, asks, thanks to you and people like you, I now happily own a bunch of fountain pens. First of all, you're welcome, and I'm sorry. Hope you enjoy the hobby, and I regret nothing. Some of these might need some nib attention. Can you recommend a few people locally that might do some nibbling? I love the verb nibbling to talk about nibmeistering, so I think that's going to become a new thing for me. And then signs at Bobby instead of Robert. So Bobby, I would say, unless you happen to live in Los Angeles, the chances of you finding a local nibmeister anywhere in the U.S. is real slim. As far as I know, there's nobody locally who does nibbling for you. Some of the people, most of the time, you have to send your nibs out. The only nibmeister I've really used before is Mike Masayama. He's not, to the best of my knowledge, not accepting incoming nib grinding and nib adjustments right now, and is mainly focused on doing some work for Franklin Christoph and attending shows and stuff like that. He may have opened up his requests again. I don't know. I haven't checked, but he is my nibmeister of choice. He was trained at Sailor, worked there for 20 years, and Sailor is known for having some of the best nibs out of the box currently on the market today. Other well-respected nibmeisters, Pendleton Brown, Dan Smith, also known as nibsmith.com, Mark Backus of nibgrinder.com, Deb Kinney, John Modishaw, Greg Manuskin. There are a bunch of them out there. I've never used any of their services, so I can't vouch for them, but most of those people I just mentioned come pretty highly recommended. The folks at Indie Pen Dance, INDY-PEN-DANCE, I know they do nib work too, and I believe it's a couple, and I believe she studied with Richard Binder, the famed nibmeister, U.S. nibmeister Richard Binder. I believe she's one of his proteges. So I've had them repair a Parker Vacuumatic, in fact, the one I talked about earlier, for me, and they did a great job on the repair. I don't know if they did any work on the nibs or not, but they're usually at pen shows. I know they were at the DC show last year, so they'll probably be at the DC show again this year. So, all right, let's talk about pen number 3. Now, this is a pen I reviewed way back in season 1. It is the Conway Stewart Wellington. Now, Conway Stewart, like Omas, is one of those brands where we'll just say rest in peace, kind of, because someone bought the rights to Conway Stewart, and I don't know if this has been largely announced yet or not, but I've been told it's okay to say this. Kenro Industries, the folks who sent me the Aurora, have gotten distribution rights to the new Conway Stewart here in the U.S. So they are going to be distributing Conway Stewart, and they distribute Montegrappa and Aurora. When Omas was in production, they were distributing them. I believe they do Hugo Boss pens, and so now the person who took over Conway Stewart is, from what I understand, and I don't know this, so I'd love to hear if anyone has any additional information. They're doing it right, so they're keeping a lot of the old designs, a lot of materials. They're not doing what has happened with some of these other brands, like, well, I won't bring up names, but some of the much beloved vintage brands have been taken over by modern companies and really kind of mangled. That does not appear to be what's happening with the new Conway Stewart. Now, I got this pen, and I had a problem with the nib, sent the nib off. This was the first pen that ever made it to Mike Masayama. He did a great job on the repair of this nib, and it became one of my favorites. It's a fine italic nib, and this is in the Dartmoor finish, the Dartmoor acrylic, so it's kind of brown and black. It's hard to video, but it's got a lot more depth to it than you can usually see on the video here. Really pretty nib. Oh, sorry. There we go. And it writes like a dream. This is a pen I love, but haven't been inking up very much. It's a limited edition, number 29 of 50. And I was looking at standing in front of my pen case the other day going, I want to use something I haven't used in a while. And I looked at this and I thought, I haven't used this in a long time. So I inked this up. And this is inked with one of my favorite, easily my top 5 inks, Conway, the Diamine Autumn Oak. Normally I try to save that for the fall, but I almost always have at least one pen inked with Autumn Oak. It's kind of orangey brown, but it's got good shading, and it's a really nice ink. I like it a lot. So that is my 3rd currently inked pen. Now I'll answer another question or two. Before we do, I am going to be attending the DC Pen Show in August. I think it's August 4th through August 7th. So if you're going to be there, and you see me, please stop and say hi. I'd love to meet you in person. That's one of my favorite parts about going to pen shows. And there's going to be a lot of get-togethers and parties in the bar after the show every night, and there's some restaurants nearby, so you'll find lots of pen people around. It's a lot of fun. If you've never been to a pen show, I highly recommend you go. This year, because I am still jobless, there will not be a lot of purchasing going on. I'm mostly going for the social aspect, and I might sell a pen or two. If there's someone who wants to buy it. But for the most part, I'm just going to say hi to everybody and have a good time and meet people and hopefully smooth over some of the jackassery that I did back in back in February when I released my review of the LA Pen Show. I said some things in that were probably not said in the best way. I was being a kind of trolly, I think, in what I said. I think I hit a nerve with a lot of people, but I want to try to smooth things over, make amends, and try to learn more about the vintage world, because that's one thing. I don't know a lot about vintage. I really want to. Even if I don't want to collect the pens, I would like to learn more, because it's always good to understand where you're coming from, where the history. It's one of those you're doomed to repeat it kind of things, and I don't want to repeat the history of fountain pens. I love this community. I love the writing instruments. I love the process of writing by hand. So I'd like to learn about where it all comes from, and there's a lot of neat stuff to see at these shows. So I'm going to try to do some recording while I'm there. I'm going to stick a couple microphones in my bag and take my camera and maybe a light or two to get some good video while I'm there. We'll see. You got to ask permission before you film people's collections, and so I'm not sure how people feel about some of that kind of stuff, but I'm really looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. So anyway, okay, another question. Let us see what we got going on here. This next question is from Shane in Salt Lake. Salt Lake. So I lived in Utah for about 13 years. I was born in northern Utah, lived there until I was 9, moved away, came back to college, moved away, came back to teach at college, and was there until 2007 when I moved up to the Seattle area. And so Salt Lake's always got a little bit of my heart there, plus most of my family is living either north or south of Salt Lake. So I know the area well. So hi, Salt Lake and Shane. Shane asks, where do you store your 60 or 70 pens in, or how do you store them? So I usually have, and I should have brought it in here with me, I didn't. I have a kind of a multi-tiered storage. So when I was working, it's been almost 4 months since the layoff, and I am desperate to find a job. I am so sick of being in this house I could scream. But when I was working, I had a set of pens. I would carry 3 pens with me to work every day, and I would use a Nocco 3-pen. I believe it's a Sinclair case for that, and that worked really well. On my desk, the pens that I have currently inked, I keep a Dudek Modern Goods 21 pen stand. It's basically a block of walnut stained dark with holes drilled in the top. And I keep my currently inked pens in that. And that's what I keep on my desk all the time. Then the pens that aren't inked are in pen boxes. So they're, flip top lids. They've got trays of 12 or 13 pens and usually 2 or 3 layers of those pens. So I'll put links to those in the show notes on penhabit.com. And you can find the link to that down in the description. I've got 2 of those boxes. And then I have a big tool case that I got from Harbor Freight. It's a wooden tool case. And I got some lined inserts, some pen tray inserts that fit in those drawers. And so any overflow that doesn't fit in the Dudek Modern Goods case, or my Notco case, or the 2 pen cases that I have, pen boxes that I have, go in there. And that's mostly the real low-end stuff, or the stuff that I'm getting ready to sell, that kind of thing. So that's how I store all of my pens. All right. Looks like we have got time for one more question. Got one more question in the well, it looks like I kind of actually answered this question, but so really quickly, if you want to submit a question for a future version of Currently Inked, just go to penhabit.com. On the left-hand side of the page, if you're on the desktop, I think it's under a menu if you're on your mobile device, there should be a link to a submission form for questions. And you can just fill out the questions, and I will see them here on my iPad. So, ta-da! It's just a Google form with asks you your name, where you're from, and what your question is. And I basically just went through the list. So if you ever have questions, you want to submit them, go ahead, and I will try to answer them in future versions of Currently Inked, either I and or my guests. So this final question is from Luke the dog, my dog. It's not actually. I don't know who submitted it because they didn't put their real name down. But it was, if you get to choose just one ink, and this is such a common question, I kind of answered it earlier, what would it be and why? For me, it would be Visconti turquoise. While turquoises are not my favorite inks, greens and purples are my favorite colors of ink. I find it is the most, it's a nice balance between blue, which is still kind of acceptable for business use, and a bright color. It's not, people look at green or purple and can go. It's still a blue ink, but it's just a little bit lighter and a little more vibrant, which is why turquoise, if I had to pick just one, it would be turquoise. And Visconti turquoise is my favorite production line ink. Now, if I could pick any ink in the history that I've tried so far, it would be Mont Blanc Honoré de Balzac turquoise. But that's not in production anymore, and I only have a bottle and a half of it left, so that would not be my one ink. So, all right, I think that should do it for this episode of Currently Inked. Sorry there was not someone else here for you to listen to besides just me rambling on. I will probably be back next week, possibly with a special guest like my dad. My parents are coming up to visit, and I'm going to try to rope him into recording an episode of Currently Inked with me because he's the one who kind of got me started in this whole mess. So, so hopefully we'll be able to you'll be able to meet Mr. Penhabit's father. So that should be fun. I'm going to try to do it. Make no promises because they're not here for very long. So, thank you so much for watching, and thank you again to Tom Barrington Leather Goods and Accessories for supporting this episode of Currently Inked. Of course, you can, if you want to support Penhabit and Currently Inked, you can go to penhabit.com and click the support link. And if you do decide to buy something from Tom Barrington Leather Goods and Accessories, please let them know that you appreciate them supporting the Penhabit. I just couldn't do this without the support that I get from you guys and from my wonderful sponsors. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you here next time on Currently Inked. Have a good one. Bye.